When I first moved into the apartment, I wasn't looking for much. Just a quiet place, somewhere I could breathe again after the breakup. The building was old, thin walls, creaky floors, and a hallway that always smelled faintly of dust and metal. But the rent was cheap, and the view of the city from the 5th floor almost made it feel peaceful. For the first week, nothing felt wrong. I unpacked, set up my furniture, and started to settle into a strange kind of calm. But then, one night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard it. Soft, muffled crying. A woman's voice, coming from the wall right beside my bed. At first, I assumed it was the neighbor. The walls were thin, after all. But when I asked the landlord about the person living next door, he frowned and said the unit was vacant. No one had rented it in months. That night, the crying started again, longer this time, closer. I pressed my ear to the wall. The sound wasn't just sadness, it was pain. A broken, choked kind of sobbing that felt too human to be a recording. I knocked on the wall once. The crying stopped. Then something tapped back, 3 slow knocks, perfectly spaced apart. For a long time, I just stood there, frozen. The air felt colder near the wall. I told myself it was pipes or echoes. Old buildings make strange noises all the time. But the next morning, when I left for work, I noticed something odd. A faint outline of fingerprints on the wall's paint, like someone had pressed their hands flat against it from the other side. I tried ignoring it, but each night the crying returned. Sometimes it was distant, other times it felt like she was right there, inches from me. Once I woke up to the sound of whispering, my own name, repeated over and over, drawn out between sobs. I started recording the sounds on my phone, hoping to capture proof. But when I played the recordings back, the crying wasn't there. Instead, there was a voice, a woman whispering, "You shouldn't have come back." I don't remember dropping my phone, but when I picked it up, the screen had cracked. That was the first night I decided to check the apartment next door myself. The landlord said it was empty, but the door wasn't locked. When I stepped inside, a wave of cold air hit me, sharp, damp, like the air inside a freezer. The place was dusty, the furniture covered in white sheets, but something felt wrong. The layout was exactly like mine. Same window, same light switch, same wall. Except the furniture wasn't just similar, it was identical. My couch, my lamp, even the crooked picture frame above the bed, all perfectly mirrored here, as if someone had copied my life and placed it behind that wall. Then I saw it. In the corner of the room, crouched low, was a woman. Her hair hung over her face, black and tangled. Her hands were clasped over her mouth, shaking, and her shoulders jerked with quiet sobs. I froze. She didn't look up, not at first. Then slowly she turned her head, just enough for me to see her eyes. They were pale and glassy, reflecting the light like water. And when she opened her mouth, I realized the crying wasn't coming from her lips. It was coming from behind her. The sound grew louder, dozens of overlapping cries, rising and falling like waves. The walls began to shake. The mirror above the dresser cracked. I stumbled back toward the door, but before I could leave, I saw something lying on the floor near her feet. A photograph. It was me, asleep in my own bed, taken from the corner of my room. I don't remember running, but I must have. When I came to, I was standing in the hallway, door wide open, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The apartment next door was silent again. When I finally gathered the courage to go back later that night, the door was locked. The landlord swore no one had entered it. He even showed me the maintenance log. The last key used there was over 6 months ago. I moved my bed away from the wall after that. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still hear the crying. And every now and then, I find things in my room that don't belong to me. A cracked picture frame, a strand of black hair on my pillow, or a damp handprint on the wall. Lately, I've started to wonder if she ever really left. Or maybe I'm the one who moved into her apartment. It had been 3 months since I left the apartment.
3 months of pretending everything was normal. But even when I slept in hotels or friends' places, I'd wake up at night feeling watched. Sometimes I'd hear quiet weeping through the walls, faint but familiar. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, imagination feeding on fear. So when a coworker mentioned his family's unused cabin by a frozen lake, I took it. A week alone in nature, no neighbors, no noise, no walls to whisper back. The cabin sat by the edge of an old lake, wide, calm, covered in a layer of ice so clear you could almost see through it. There were no other houses around, just silence and pine trees heavy with snow. The first few nights were quiet. I'd light a fire, cook something simple, and try to convince myself that the world outside was peaceful again. But on the fourth night, I saw something strange. Around midnight, I stepped out to smoke and noticed a faint blue light glowing beneath the frozen lake. It wasn't a reflection or moonlight. It came from deep under the surface, moving slowly, pulsing, like something alive. At first I thought it was a trick of the ice or my tired eyes, but when I looked again, the glow was still there, faint but steady, drifting closer to the shore. The next morning I mentioned it to a man in the nearby town, the only shopkeeper who didn't treat me like a tourist. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You shouldn't be here at night. The lake keeps what it takes." I laughed it off, but his words stuck with me. That night, I brought my phone and tripod to the dock. If the light showed again, I wanted to capture it. Around 1 a.m., the glow returned, stronger this time, swirling beneath the surface, like a slow blue current. I hit record. The lake was silent, except for the occasional crack of shifting ice. But as I zoomed in, the shape of the light changed. It wasn't a glow anymore. It was a figure, a woman's outline beneath the ice. Long hair flowing, hands pressed against the underside, her face turned upward. And even from above, I could tell she was the same woman from the apartment. I dropped the phone, stumbling back, but the light didn't fade. Her eyes opened under the ice, pale, cloudy, unblinking. Her mouth began to move, slow and unnatural, as if forming words underwater. When I leaned closer, I realized the sound wasn't muffled. It was echoing around me. The same whisper I'd heard before. "You shouldn't have come back." Then the ice cracked, a sharp snapping sound that echoed across the lake. I backed away, slipping in the snow, heart pounding. But the crack didn't spread. Instead, the glow slowly sunk deeper until it vanished into black water. I grabbed my phone and ran inside. When I checked the recording, the screen was mostly static until the last few seconds. There, in the frozen frame, I saw my reflection in the ice. Only I wasn't holding the camera. I was standing behind myself. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her under the surface, hair drifting, face tilted upward, eyes wide. By morning, I was ready to leave, but before I did, I noticed something strange on the wooden dock. Wet footprints, bare, small, leading from the lake straight to the cabin door. I packed in silence, locked up, and didn't look back once. But when I got home, the frost on my suitcase didn't melt, and on the inside of the window, faint but visible, was a handprint, small, wet, pressed against the glass from the inside.
After the lake, I stopped telling people what I'd seen. The few who listened only looked at me with that polite kind of pity. The same look you give to someone you've already decided is lying to themselves. So I stopped talking, stopped explaining. I moved again, this time to a small town far inland, miles from any lake or city. The quiet felt different here, heavier somehow, but I convinced myself it was what I needed. I found a job at a late-night radio station, one of those local AM frequencies that barely reached the next town. The pay was awful, but the hours suited me. My only job was to keep the signal running and monitor the static for interruptions. Most nights, nothing happened, just a faint hiss of white noise and the ticking of the wall clock. The first night I heard her voice, I thought it was
interference. A faint, almost human sound buried deep under the static. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. It was a woman's voice, soft, trembling, whispering my name. I turned down the gain, checked the frequencies, swapped cables. Still there. Always there. Under everything. I tried ignoring it, but it became impossible. Every night around 2 a.m. the whisper returned. Sometimes I'd catch words between the noise, phrases that didn't belong to any broadcast. Do you hear me? You left me. Look behind you. I thought I was losing it. Until one night, the power cut out. The monitors went black, the static died, and the room fell silent. For a few seconds, I sat there in darkness, trying not to breathe too loudly. Then the backup generator kicked in, and the equipment hummed back to life. But something was wrong. The microphone light was blinking. Red. Recording. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't said a word. The waveform on the screen began to move, tracing invisible sounds. Then, through the speakers, my own voice came out, not live, recorded, saying words I'd never spoken. Don't let it find you again. My chest tightened. I stopped the recording, deleted the file, powered down everything. But when I looked up, I saw my reflection in the glass window of the studio booth. Only it wasn't matching me. My reflection was still sitting, still staring forward, while I had already stood up. Then, slowly, it lifted a hand and touched the glass from the inside. The surface fogged where its palm met mine. And behind the fog, faintly, I could see her again. The woman from the apartment, from under the lake. Her face pressed against the reflection, her mouth moving soundlessly. The broadcast system flickered back on by itself. The static roared so loud it drowned out my thoughts. Somewhere in the noise, I could hear her voice whispering the same thing over and over. You shouldn't have come back. When the power finally died again, everything went black. I must have passed out because when I woke up, it was morning. The generator was off, the clock was blinking 000, but the microphone light was still red, still recording. I played back the last few seconds, expecting nothing but static. Instead, I heard footsteps, slow, steady, circling the room. Then my own voice whispering, right next to the mic, she's already here. That was my last night at the station. I quit the same morning, packed what little I had, and drove with no plan. But wherever I go now, I can still hear it, that faint hiss of static in the background. Sometimes when I pass an old radio or hear white noise from a TV, I catch her voice again, always saying the same thing, always knowing my name.
I thought leaving the radio station would make it stop. The voices, the crying, the lights, but it never really leaves. It only gets quieter until the silence feels louder than the sound ever was. When my mother passed away, I had no choice but to go back to the place I swore I'd never return to, my childhood home. It had been empty for years, crumbling at the edges, but still standing like it had been waiting for something. Maybe for me. The first night there felt wrong from the start. The house was freezing, even with the heater on. The floorboards groaned like they were exhaling. Every sound echoed too long, like the air was hollow. I told myself I'd just stay a few days, clean the place, sort through what was left, and go. But that night, I found something in the basement. There'd always been a light switch near the door down there. When I flipped it on, the bulb flickered weakly, casting thin shadows across the stone walls. But in the far corner, behind the old water heater, I saw something glowing, faint, cold, blue. At first I thought it was a reflection, but as I got closer I realized it wasn't light at all. It was a mirror. A small, round mirror, half frozen into the wall.
The glass was fogged, but when I wiped it clean, I froze. The reflection wasn't of the basement. It was of something else. The apartment. The same room I'd lived in months ago. The same cracked frame above the bed. And standing in the reflection, just behind me, was her. The woman. Her face pale, dripping water, hair plastered to her cheeks. She was closer this time. Too close. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a box, but when I looked up again, the mirror was showing something different. Not the apartment, not the lake. It was showing a tunnel, a narrow dirt passage disappearing behind where the water heater stood. When I leaned closer, I felt a draft, cold air coming from behind the wall. I moved the heater aside and found it. An opening. The tunnel was real. It stretched into darkness, damp and narrow with frozen roots hanging from the ceiling. I don't know what made me go in. Maybe I wanted to know how deep this went. Maybe I already knew I wouldn't find peace until I faced it. The air grew colder the farther I went. Every step echoed like it didn't belong to me. Then after what felt like forever, I saw a faint blue glow at the end. When I reached it, my breath stopped. I was standing in front of a door. And when I pushed it open, I stepped into the cabin. The same one by the frozen lake. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The firewood, the cracked mug, even the damp footprints near the door. Only this time, the lake outside wasn't frozen. It was black water, completely still, reflecting the faint light from the cabin window. And in that reflection, I saw her again, standing in the water, staring up at me. But now I could see her clearly. Her skin was pale blue, veins dark beneath it, eyes lifeless but full of something that looked like sorrow. She lifted a hand, reaching toward me, and before I could move, the glass of the window froze over. The frost spread across the wood, creeping up my arm as I tried to back away. When I looked down, her hand was on my wrist, cold, wet, pressing through the glass like the barrier didn't matter. I felt her fingers close around me. It burned and froze at the same time. Then she spoke, not in whispers this time, but clearly, her voice soft and hollow. "You shouldn't have come back." I tried to pull away, but her grip tightened, leaving a frostbite mark around my wrist, deep, pale, and perfect in shape. And then she was gone. The window thawed. The room was empty again, but I could still feel her touch, still hear her voice echoing through the house even after I crawled back through the tunnel. I don't remember falling asleep that night. When I woke, I was in my childhood bedroom, the morning light spilling through cracked blinds. Everything looked normal again, except for one thing. On the bedside table, next to my phone, lay a single wet photograph. It showed the same basement mirror, and standing behind me in its reflection, was smiling faintly, was me.
After the basement tunnel, the cabin, and the blue light under the ice, I thought I understood it. I thought I knew what was following me, but I was wrong. The days after I returned from my childhood home were strange, quiet, yet heavy, like the air itself remembered me. I avoided mirrors, radios, even the windows in my apartment. Still, at night, I could feel her. Not the woman exactly, something else. Something that knew me better than I knew myself. It started small. Shadows moving in the corner of my eyes. Whispers that seemed like echoes of my own thoughts. Reflections that lingered a fraction too long. Then came the photographs. Everywhere I went, I found them. A picture of my sleeping self, taken from some impossible angle. A handprint on a window I hadn't touched. Faint footprints that appeared in dust I had swept an hour before. And then I saw it clearly for the first time. I was standing in my apartment, looking into the bathroom mirror, when I noticed something impossible. My reflection wasn't following me. It moved first. It raised a hand, slow, deliberate. And then I felt it, cold, wet, and real, like the frostbite from the basement. It pressed against me, not through glass, through me. I stumbled back. The mirror fogged, and when I wiped it, I realized the truth. I wasn't alive. I hadn't been alive since the first night in the apartment. Everything that had happened, the apartment, the lake, the radio station, the basement, the cabin,
had been a timeline looping around me. Each reflection, each whisper, each frostbite touch, all of it was what kept me tethered here. The woman, the blue light, the whispers, none of it was trying to hurt me. It was keeping me company. Because death alone is too quiet, too empty. I tried to run. I tried to smash the mirror, but it didn't break. It never would. Because the mirror wasn't a mirror. It was the boundary between me and the living, a boundary I had already crossed. And then I saw her, the pale woman from the apartment in the lake. She stood behind me, her face serene now, not angry or cruel. Her eyes met mine, and I understood. She wasn't haunting me. She was showing me the truth. Now it's your turn to wait. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder. The air shimmered, and everything went still. I looked into the mirror one last time, and there, in the glass, perfectly still, was me, smiling. I could feel her leave, but the smile remained. I had joined the loop. I had become the reflection. The mirror flickered faintly blue, then black. Silence, except for the whisper. You shouldn't have come back. And somewhere far away, I knew it would repeat. Someone else would see the apartment, the lake, the light, and I would be there, waiting.
The shadows linger longer than you think. Even when the lights are off, even when the room is silent, something might still be watching. If tonight you feel a whisper or see a reflection that moves on its own, remember, you are never truly alone. And if you want Sleep Stealer to continue bringing you closer to the things that hide in the dark, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story is waiting for you. Sleep well, if you can.